Welcome. Sigrid Nunez will be speaking about her book, The Friend. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody here for joining us at the book festival. Remember, of course, it is free, but donations are essential to continuing the festival's success. So please take a look at our survival kits. And remember, it's a lunchtime now, so there's a lot of different types of food available for sale from the Orange Peel Bakery and Mary's Lemonade and Chef Dion's Catering and Scottish Bakehouse. So please support our vendors. At the end, the author will take questions from the audience right here at the mic. And also, the author will be signing books at the book signing tent immediately following the session for about 30 minutes. If you haven't purchased this book yet, the books are available in the book sales tent. And again, thank you so much for your support. It's my honor to introduce Elizabeth Benedict. She is a best-selling novelist, journalist, and teacher of creative writing, editor, and writing coach. She has published 5 acclaimed novels, including the bestseller Almost, the National Book Award finalist Slow Dancing, The Joy of Writing Sex, a guide for fiction writers, and hundreds of reviews, essays, and articles in national publications, including The Times, Esquire, and The Huffington Post. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's really a pleasure to be here to introduce Sigrid. Let me just give you some of the facts about Sigrid's writing career. She is the author of 7 novels, including A Feather on the Breath of God, The Last of Her Kind, and Salvation City. She's also the author of Sempre Susan, a memoir of Susan Sontag. She's the recipient of the 2008 National Book Award for her New York Times bestselling novel, The Friend, which we'll be talking about today. The Friend is on some dozen Best of the Year book lists. She received a Whiting Writers Award, the Rome Prize in Literature, and a Berlin Prize. She's currently the writer in residence at Boston University. And on Monday, one of Sigrid's earlier novels called Mitts, which is being reissued, and I urge everyone to first buy The Friend and then buy Mitts, and you may want to buy many copies for everyone you know. It is unimaginably a novel about Virginia Woolf's pet marmoset, and it is utterly gripping and wonderful. Today, and I just want to say a few words about sort of why I'm here. Sigrid and I both went to Barnard College at slightly different years, and in the end of 2006, the New York Times asked me to review her then new novel, The Last of Her Kind, and I, of course, knew her name, but I hadn't read her work. And and this book was set at Barnard, and it was about a lot of people at Barnard, and that's why they chose me. And I loved the book, and I think that's when my relationship with Sigrid started. And because of our Barnard connection, we've done a lot of events together at Barnard. I've interviewed her at Barnard reunions, and we've done other events. And Sigrid contributed an essay to an anthology I did on writers and their mentors, and she wrote about Susan Sontag, and that essay became the beginning of her books, Sempre Susan. So Sigrid and I have been talking to each other in public and private a lot. I wanted to, and I guess 2 summers ago, Sigrid sent me galleys for this book, The Friend, and I read it very quickly and said, Sigrid, this is an incredible book. It's going to be a huge success. Everybody will love it. And she said, I'm not sure, nobody's making a big deal of it. I don't have any expectations. And I said, yes, but I mean, there's a dog on the cover. There are more dogs in New York than people. The only stores in New York that don't close are canine stores and stores that sell dog treats and doggy daycare. And sure enough, I was right. And the book has been an amazing success and it won the National Book Award. And I just want to begin by reading to you Sigrid's very pithy acceptance speech, when she won the National Book Award.
Short. It's very, very short.
And I actually, I wasn't at the book award, but for some reason, I guess I was on Twitter, which is where I spend all my time, and I saw that the book awards were on and they were being live streamed, and I turned on just as Sigrid's prize was about to be announced, and I thought, wow, I wonder what she's going to do, because people tend to go on and on and on and on and on and on and thank everyone they've ever met, and I knew that wasn't really Sigrid's style. And so imagine my lack of surprise when her acceptance speech was as follows. And I think she must have said thank you. That's not here in the Times. But I became a writer not because I was seeking community, but rather because I thought it was something I could do alone. How lucky to have discovered that writing books made the miraculous possible, to be removed from the world and to be part of the world at the same time. And this is sort of the essence of Sigrid. To many of us, including her friends, she's very private. She works ferociously. She doesn't ever go on Twitter. She doesn't ever go on Facebook. She actually gets work done. But she's also a great friend. And she comes out once in a while and talks to us. And she writes these fantastic books, and what more could you want, right? Sigrid, would you just talk about that sort of paradox of, wanting to be alone and needing to be alone, but the sort of paradox of wanting all that solitude, but then really doing it in the service of communicating with zillions of people you don't know, and kind of whether that's always been part of what you wanted to do, or...
Well, certainly the part of my life that's the writing life. I've always thought of the writing life as something, a solitary life. I mean, it's like the famous quote from Henry James: he who would be a writer should have one word on his banner: loneliness. I mean, it's really, it really is the way people have looked at writers and thought of the writing life. But to me that's like one of the really wonderful things about it, because you don't really need any. I mean, you have all the things that you read. You have that community. You can read whatever you want. You always feel. I think writers feel a part of other books, the people who wrote the books. So yeah, I mean, I do tend, I meet my students, I see among my students that for them, one of the biggest things about becoming a writer is they see it as finding a community and being part of a community, and that I don't share. On the other hand, if you do teach, then you do have that community. I mean, you really do. I really feel like I have both of it. And also, I think I do live in New York, so so I'm really the people who are my friends, the people I socialize with, and the people I teach, and the departments I work for, these are all writers. So it's inescapable. But yeah, for me, I really feel like it's something that both the best and the worst of it is that it really is something that you do by yourself, at a desk, alone, and the thinking that you do about it also, I think you do best alone, or at least I do.
Both Sigrid and I studied at Barnard with Elizabeth Hardwick, and and Sigrid has told me that Hardwick said, and I never heard her say this, but she said, in order to write, you need to be bored.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could sort of talk some about that, and about whether we're bored enough these days, or what that means to you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like such an odd thing to say at the time, because I was so young, and the last thing you want is to be bored, and it sounded awful. But she said you need these long, empty hours in order to write. And I think there's a certain amount of truth in that, but that's like part of the solitary thing. And it is true that I imagine that because there are so many more distractions now, that in a way it must be much harder to find that sort of empty space, where you're. I mean, it's the kind of like you need to have whatever that thing is that makes you perfectly. The way most people can't read on a bus, so you're on a long bus ride, and you have to be content to be able to just stare out the window and not go crazy. And I have found that kind of thing, just sort of being able to do that and actually not get bored with being bored. I like that because I do start thinking about my work. I do get ideas for my work. It's just like walking, walking without your phone, just walking with absolutely nothing in your ears, nothing in your hand, and you're working on something at home that you go for a long walk, or you stare out the window, and it definitely helps you solve the problems that you're trying to solve in your writing. And I'm not sure that I would be able to do that if I were consulting my phone or even listening to music, But for other people, everybody's different. Other people, they're able to, do more than one thing at a time, I guess.
I think Kafka said there's never enough silence, right?
Kafka, who says all. So, one thing that Kafka said.
Not that he should be your idol here, right?
Right. No, but he did say for a writer there can never be enough solitude. That's one thing that he said. So yeah. When I invited Sigrid to be in the Mentors book, I had already written an essay on Elizabeth Hardwick, and I asked one of our Barnard writer friends, Mary Gordon, and she also wanted to write an essay about Hardwick. And so when I asked Sigrid to be in the book, I think she thought initially of writing about Hardwick, but she then changed her mind and wrote about Susan Sontag. And I wonder if you could talk about the influence that Sontag had on your life as a writer, and I guess as an artist or a New Yorker. Yeah, no, she had a profound influence because again, I was so young. I just finished the MFA program at Columbia when I met her, and she's exactly one of those people. She had an extremely serious view of the writer's life as a true vocation, like a nun or a priest, like writing as a sacred thing, a religion, and she made me feel that it was you couldn't take it seriously enough, which meant also that it was perfectly okay, even though you hadn't published anything, you were absolutely nobody, to take the work absolutely seriously, as you would a religion if you were a believer. And that, in fact, that was the attitude that you had to have, and that it was something that it was perfectly the right thing to do, to consider that you would make whatever sacrifices had to be made for this work. And that was really, really very helpful, because everybody else was like, when aren't you going to get married, or what are you going to do for a living? And for her, it was like, you just, whatever the risks are, if you're serious, you take them. And I certainly, and whatever advice she gave, whatever difficulties I might have had with her, whatever advice she gave, I took. Whatever she said to read, I read. Whatever art exhibition she said to see, I went, and never regretted it. It's like she was always right to me. She really was. There was always something worth seeing. She and also she was obsessed with being that person to say, I saw this movie, you have to see it. No, tomorrow, you have to do this, or you have to do this now. Like, she really, if she loved something and she thought something was worthwhile, she wanted everybody to see that and take the pleasure and the excitement that she had taken. So she was always mentoring. She was always teaching. She was always trying to get, if somebody would come to dinner and she'd start talking to them, or they're just sort of passing through, she'd take out a little piece of paper and she would write a little reading list. The books that she'd been reading lately. And I mean, there's so many writers that it's possible that I would have discovered them myself, but the first time I heard of them, was from her.
And, I have to say that Sigrid has acquired or adopted or inherited some of these habits. And two summers ago or 2 falls ago, she had just seen this new Agnes Varda movie called Places and Faces, or Faces and Places, Village Visage. And she was writing me and she said, "You have to see this film." And then in the next email, she'd say, "Have I told you about that film? You have to see this film." And months went by, and I was very preoccupied and busy with other things. And I looked at the film schedule, and I saw the film was closing the following day. And I thought, if I don't see this goddamn movie, Sigrid will never talk to me, because she's told me 4 times to see it. And I said, "Sigrid, I'm going to go see this movie tomorrow. It's the last day. It's across the street from your house." And so we sat and had coffee after the movie, and I told her, I knew that if I didn't see this, that would be it, And as we sometimes do, we sat and talked on wooden chairs for 4 hours. It was very, very difficult. But the movie, she was right.
It was great.
Faces and Places. I'd like to ask you to read a very short passage from The Friend, and then we'll start talking about The Friend. I just want to point out that National Public Radio says on the cover of Sigrid's book, the paperback, a penetrating, moving meditation, Nunez has a wry, withering wit. And why would you want to have a wit unless it was wry and withering, right? What other kind of wit should there be?
So, sweet, syrupy wit.
A really sweet, nice,
Creamy.
happy wit. So this is one of the most withering passages in the book.
Okay.
Oh, and do you want to just sort of set it up? I mean,
This is very early in the book, and the narrator's mentor has committed suicide, and the shock has barely worn off. But there is now, the time has come for the memorial service. And he is a writer, and she is a writer. By the time the memorial took place, the shock had worn off. People distracted themselves with speculation about what it would be like to have all the wives in one room. Not to mention the girlfriends, all of whom, the joke went, wouldn't fit in one room. Except for the slideshow loop with its hammering reminder of lost beauty, lost youth, it was not very different from other literary gatherings. People mingling at the reception were heard talking about money, literary prizes as reparations, and the latest author review. Decorum in this instance meant no tears. People used the opportunity to network and catch up. Gossip and head shaking over wife two's oversharing in memoriam piece, and now the rumor that she's turning it into a book. Wife 3, it must be said, looked radiant, though it was a cold radiance like that of a blade. "Treat me like an object of pity," her bearing announced. "Hint that I was somehow to blame, and I will cut you." I was touched when she asked me how my writing was going. "Can't wait to read it," she said untruthfully. "I'm not sure I'm going to finish it," I said. "Oh, but he would have wanted you to finish." That disconcerting habit she has of slowly shaking her head while speaking, as if simultaneously denying every word she says. Someone semi-famous approached. Before turning away, she said, "Is it okay if I call you?" I left early. On my way out, I heard someone say, "I hope there are more people than this at my memorial." And and now he's officially a dead white male. Is it true that the literary world is mined with hatred, a battlefield rimmed with snipers where jealousies and rivalries are always being played out? Asked the NPR interviewer of the distinguished author, who allowed that it was. There's a lot of envy and enmity, the author said, and he tried to explain. It's like a sinking raft that too many people are trying to get onto. So any push you can deliver makes the raft a little higher for you. If reading really does increase empathy, as we are constantly being told that it does, it appears that writing takes some away.
I'd say that was pretty withering.
Thank you.
So to get to the friend, and then we'll take some questions. But the New York Times recently did a piece about Sigrid, and it says she didn't plan to make her narrator a writer who so closely resembles her, but details from her own life seeped in. Quote, I had no interest in writing about a writer, really, but all these years I've spent so much time thinking about writing and the teaching of writing, it came very naturally, she said. And she also said she'd always wanted to write a novel with an animal as the central character and was moved by stories of dogs mourning for their owners. And I guess what I wanted to ask you, Sigrid, is once it seemed like this was becoming a very autobiographical piece or work, did you resist that? Were you a little freaked out? Did you say, maybe I shouldn't? Or, I mean, did you have these struggles with that piece, or did you just say, oh, what the hell, I'll just go for it?
Yeah, I felt like I didn't have a choice because what happened is that, this book is really, you spend a lot of time in the consciousness of this narrator. So, the narrator has a certain way of seeing things, observing things, putting things together, whatever. Just ways of thinking. And as I, continued to write, it was just so clear that, this is the way a writer thinks. This is the way a writer sees the world. So there isn't any point in pretending that this isn't a writer, because that's who it was. But yeah, originally, writers don't want to write. They really don't want to write books about writers, and they're kind of discouraged from doing so. I mean, the writer would have a qualm, the agent would have a qualm, the publisher would have a qualm, the editor would. It's just like, well, a writer, I don't know.
It's a taboo,
yeah,
except it's become less of one.
It's a taboo, but like they're just, so what would I then have? Well, what does she do? It would have been like very odd to kind of invent some profession. So that it came very naturally, and then I didn't resist it. You don't like it, you don't have to read the book. Just but I really had to be true to the book and not to the wider world.
Well, I just want to say that it's very that part of it as the writer persona, whatever is or isn't autobiographical, is very rich and very moving. But at the same time, it's not confessional. It's not sort of this horrible thing happened and that, and I've got all these grievances. It's not a book about grievances, except about the end of real literary life. There's some cutting remarks about literary life, but it's not a book about grievances as much as a writer's notebook with a story woven into it. And there's a huge amount of wonderful, very accessible material about writers' lives that I think is just in Sigrid's head. And so anyway, I want to ask people if they have questions for Sigrid, because I've kind of dominated the conversation, but I'm sure people have questions, and please come up to the microphone. Yeah.
In the book, you name Apollo the dog, you name Hector the super In the end, you name Bo the boyfriend's dog, but the friend remains the friend. The wives are numbered 1, 2, and 3. The narrator is never given a name. And I wonder about how you decided who to give specific names to and who to give a general title.
Well, for one thing about the friend, I always see the friend as three possibilities. There's the mentor who commits suicide, the lifelong friend. There's Apollo, who's a friend, but there's also the narrator, who is a huge friend both to the friend who died and to the dog. So what happened was, and I've seen this now a few times with other writers, Anna Burns, who wrote Milkman, for example, in an interview, she said exactly the same thing. I did have names for the characters in the beginning while I was working on it, and they didn't work. I'm kind of paraphrasing what she said because it was exactly what I felt. The narrative got heavy, and the writing wasn't coming along the way I wanted it to. Those names they just didn't seem to belong. So, and when I got rid of them, and she and others said exactly the same thing, then I was okay again. Then I could continue. But it never occurred to me that the dog would not have a name. That would have been impossible. It was his name, there are different names that he's given as possibilities. So that was always there. And I'm not really sure. Hector, just that, again, it came to mind. Now, Bo, who is the half Great Dane, half German Shepherd that the narrator said she shared with her boyfriend, oddly enough, now that ex-boyfriend, when we were in our 20s, we did have this dog who was half Great Dane, half German Shepherd. He's in the book. And I call him Bo. That was not his name. It's like, I call him Bo to protect his identity. Why? His name was Kunak, which is the Russian dialect for best friend in a certain dialect. But for some reason, I couldn't use that name. I didn't want to use his real name, and that I have no real explanation for.
There are certain limits to what she'll do. How far she'll go.
Yes.
Yes, I have a very basic question. What books do you recommend to read?
Oh, I don't really books to recommend to read. I kind of don't. First of all, it's too big a question. I mean, there are so many books and so many favorite writers, and I kind of don't like to name books. Because then I'm just leaving, so many people out. I mean, I will just say, just because it's a very recent thing that I happen to have read. There's a book coming out in September, and I was sent the galleys, called The Grammarians by Kathleen Shine, which I just thought was an incredibly marvelous book. Funny, brilliant, everything you could wish for. And since I just read it and it's coming out in September, I would love to recommend that book. But otherwise, I think you have to find the people to read like on your own. I really do.
And I think that I'm just going to step in and just it sometimes is hard to know what to read because there's so many books, and that's why a good independent bookstore like Bunch of Grapes or like whatever the independent bookstores are in your community, they'll have the staff picks or they'll have new in fiction.
True.
And at Porter Square Books in Boston, in Somerville, Cambridge. I'm sorry. They have staff picks. They also have these are the NPR. These are the books that have been on NPR recently. So if you go to a bookstore like that, where they've done some of the homework for you, you can be directed to some books that certain people think are good. And then there's also, of course, the Amazon. Of course, don't buy anything at Amazon. Buy it at your local independent bookstore. But you like Sigrid's book, and then you go to people also buy this book, and they like this book, and you can discover lots of interesting things that way.
It's true.
And so there are some kind of inherent new kind of mechanisms for finding books that that maybe people don't think about. Yeah.
I would like to follow up on that question I tried to ask you yesterday when they hurried you out of the panel, because I read this with a group of people in a book group, and it refers to something you just said about the literary world. there was, and you said it was accessible. Some people found that to be more accessible than others. And my question to you is, were you aware of that when you wrote it? Did it enter into your thinking at all that the story is wonderful and I loved it, but some people in our group found it more accessible than others because of the amount of literary
because of
references?
all the literary references.
Because of all the literary.
Well, now part of and other references. Well, now part of the thing is, of course, that the narrator is very isolated with this grieving dog and her own grief, right? But she had to have a life, I mean, she had more than the dog in her life. And she was clearly a writer, and she was teaching. So, I had to give her a life. I had to create a world that she moved in. And she, as a writer, she would be somebody who would figure things out about what's happening to her and what's happening to the dog through what she read. I mean, that's because she's not just a writer, she's a huge reader. Her life is literature. And so she would, she would use these things to understand the story herself. So I had no problem with that because it came very naturally to me to think like that. And one thing seemed always to lead to another. I would remember, I'd be writing about Rilke's letters to a young poet, and then I would remember that his daughter had committed suicide. But I hadn't thought of that until I started writing it. And then I remembered, well, didn't Flannery O'Connor also have somebody in her life who wrote to her and said, when she was quite young, can you give me advice as a writer? And she did. A person whom we know as A from the letters, and then and A also committed suicide. You see, so like one thing, these things just kept on growing. I was aware that that wouldn't necessarily be for everybody, but also the dog story might not be for everybody. But that's just something when you're writing, you can't make those calculations. I mean, because there are so many different readers that you can't sort of think, well, what can I write that where they'll like everything about it, and where the largest possible number of people will be reached by this story and say, this story is for me. So I just went along with, as Virginia Woolf says somewhere, write the book that you want to write, and whether it turns out to be for an hour or for the ages is irrelevant. So you have to write the book that's in you without thinking about that. Now I find it odder that there have been numerous complaints about, this was supposed to be a book about a dog. There's not enough dog. It's really a book about a stupid writer, and there's no dog, and the dog's only there for okay. So I want to say, well, The Bark magazine named it the best fiction book of the year. So there must be a dog in it. There's dog, it is, so but there's been people have wanted more dog, or why didn't she put more dog in there?
Fewer writers and more dog. Yes, the recipe for success.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Hi, Sigrid. So as you know, I had the pleasure of going to an early reading of this book when you were sort of in the first stages of it, and that reading wound up being, I believe, the opening pages to the book. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the revision process and how the story shifted at all, if it did, in the writing of this, and just revisions in general, and how that relates to sort of the iterative process of writing.
Well, for me, what happened with this book, which is totally familiar to me because this is the way I write. It began because I was asked to, because I teach at BU, and every spring we have a faculty reading, and because there are several of us, they say, please don't read for more than 10 minutes. And so I wanted to read something new. And I thought, well, I'll just start. And I started exactly where this book starts. And, and kind of, passed it off as an excerpt from a longer work, or the beginning of a longer work, right? And then I was also going to be doing a much longer reading at the University of Maryland. 25 minutes they wanted, so I went on with it. And since I do write linearly, chronologically. I mean, I begin with something and then I write, and the thing grows from there. I don't actually revise, and I revise page by page as I'm going along, but I don't move on to the next section, to the next short section, until I have what I have the way I want it. And everything that happens in the book happens because of what came before. No outlines or plans. I mean, I might have an idea, oh, I know how this should end, or whatever, but so I just kind of creep along like that. And in fact, the penultimate chapter of the book, or maybe it's actually the one before it, it starts out saying, how should this story end? And it's absolutely true. I'd gotten all the way to that point and had no idea how I was going to end this book. And however, whatever came after it came while I was writing it. So I never do like a whole draft and then go back and revise the whole thing, make big changes. By the time I get to the end, it's finished. And there are only small things that I do to it after that.
That is an amazing accomplishment and achievement, and an amazing way to work, and a really inspiring note to end on. Unfortunately, we can't keep talking, but you can keep talking to Sigrid by buying her book.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Please join Sigrid in the book signing tent.